You're listening to a mostly harmless cutaway.
Mostly harmless. Mostly harmless? Oh, come. I think that's pretty good coverage for this disintegrated pile of rubble.
Hi, this is Eric.
And this is Caleb.
And welcome back to this mostly harmless cutaway, episode 171. Yes, continuing to break new territory. I know you were expecting more Series 10. I know everyone loves our series of commentaries for that particular series of Doctor Who. But because it was in real time, short notice for me and Caleb just to come up with this, we decided to just do something, off the beaten track. Something we could just do really quickly with short notice. And we came up with our randomizer, which was spun off screen, off mic, already predetermined. And it came up with tonight's story, which is the museum. And perhaps it was the choice that came up by the randomizer, but this being a light panel episode, just me and Caleb, obviously no one else wanted to show up to talk about the museum is what I'm taking away from that. So were they right in staying away from this conversation? I guess we're about to find out.
Yeah, and I'll say I've been staying away. I've not probably only seen the Space Museum twice, and the last time I watched it would have been maybe around 2010. I would have seen it for the first time when I went through all of the Hartnell stuff in 2009. And then I think I gave it a second shot and I was like, okay, that's good enough for me. I don't need to go back. So, is this one that you've seen much or similar kind of case?
Not at all. Similar case. So I believe I'd only seen this story once before, and it's when I too was going through my Hartnell run, my initial Hartnell run of viewing. And I probably saw this circa 2011, 2012, somewhere around there is probably when I watched this for the first time. And frankly, didn't retain much. And I think there's something to that as to why I didn't retain so much about it. Because when I was going through like all the existing Hartnells at that time, and I was watching them all in chronological air date order. And I'm not going to lie, there was definitely Hartnell episodes, especially multi-parters, where I'm sure I just had it playing and my mind was elsewhere. I think that happened quite a lot in the big grand scheme of things of going through his entire catalog. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happened with this story the first time I watched it. So if you would have asked me before I prepared for this discussion what all the episode was really about, I could not have told you. Not really. Other than what anyone could infer just from the title, I couldn't really tell you much more than that. So it was almost like watching it again for the very first time.
Yeah, I think all I could have said was Hartnell hides in a Dalek and they see themselves frozen in a case. That's all I remember coming back.
I didn't even remember the case part. I remember the Dalek for sure, but not even the case part. So, woo, this is gonna be one for the books.
And I'm curious, just before you continue, is this the first Hartnell that you guys have done for MHC? I can't remember if another one came up.
We did. I can't remember if they were commentaries or not. I think they were commentaries. Oh, I could have. Well, maybe I'm wrong in my memory. I was gonna say I thought we had started off the season at some point, and season 2 specifically, but maybe I'm just making that up. I definitely did Planet of the Giants approximately 3 years ago with Mark Cockram on his Doctor Who podcast. So seek that out. He specifically had me on as a guest for that particular story.
And what was the name of the show?
Doctor Who, All Space and Time. Kitchen Sink Drama is the name of the episode on the podcast.
Yeah, but now that whole song and dance has been done, yeah.
That was hard to find. Good grief.
Yeah, now we're forced to confront this episode. Yeah.
And it came up on the randomizer, and you actually said, like, should we go with this or not? And besides principles, and I always say, why go against a randomizer? What is the point? I mean, if you're just going to go and
Yeah.
select whatever you want anyway, no point. And what? I mean, there shouldn't be any Doctor Who episode in existence that is undiscussable, if that's a word. So why the heck not? And furthermore, I thought it was a good opportunity to break out my Blu-ray set, because this is part of the newest addition to my Doctor Who library. And it's kind of a shame, really, because I have all the Blu-ray Doctor Who box sets for Classic Who that have been released in North America at this point. And it's really sad that having all the sets, I've probably only watched 4 or 5 stories in total out of all the, from all the box sets.
Mm-hmm.
I've only watched 4 stories in full, and certainly hadn't watched any in full yet from this particular set. This being the newest release in North America. So it was a good opportunity to get that in hand and kind of check it out and see what the Blu-ray has to offer. So I was looking forward to that, to be honest, and putting it to use.
Yeah, and there's a place to go. How do you feel like there was an improvement? Did you test it against your old DVD or?
No, I didn't do a side-by-side comparison. Unfortunately, and this is the problem, because it's obvious why they chose the first 2 Blu-ray sets they released, which was the first Baker season, followed by the first Davison series, because in both of those cases there was a fair amount of existing 16mm exterior filming that they could put in pristinely onto the Blu-rays, so you could go, wow, check out these scenes that look amazing, that are intermixed with the studio footage. But sadly, with a lot of the other forthcoming releases, there's just not that much of that type of material.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly, like with at least as far as I can remember from the final season of McCoy on Blu-ray, I think it's all like 100% video. So how good can it look?
Yeah.
And sadly, we all know the story behind missing stories. So it's not like there's much newly recovered footage that didn't already exist for the DVDs. So it's essentially the same materials, just stamped on the Blu-ray. So there's no significant wow factor that you're going to notice, other than the inherent flaws with standard DVD technology, because standard DVDs still suffer here and there from little pixelation and things like that. That's not a fault of the original material. So you don't have those types of issues, but it's not like you're going to find new resolution or anything like that. Still the same original elements. But hey, it's something.
Yeah, and I wonder if maybe they could improve the sound or anything like that. I don't know.
It's kind of the same. I mean, it was all remastered for the Blu-rays in the first place, like the sound,
Mm-hmm.
and it's mostly a carryover. Certainly for the first Doctor, it's mostly a carryover of the same original sound elements that they were able to retrieve or whatever. Because virtually none of them are original. I think most of them, or many of them, come from off television recordings that people did on their own. I think that's how a lot of the audio tracks exist on the DVDs, etc. But,
but I guess
it's good enough. It's good enough.
Yeah, and it's probably better than my Region 2 DVD that I watched today, which was not looking its best. It was definitely, I could use the upgrade of the Blu-ray, so I might have to do that soon.
Yeah, it's probably an upgrade. Although I will say something that's weird, and you'll notice it on the DVDs of Hartnell and Troughton era, black and white era Doctor Who. But for some reason, it almost becomes slightly more noticeable to me on the Blu-ray edition, because of the more stable Blu-ray representation. Were you able to notice in your version how sometimes, especially when the camera is panning, it almost looks like you're seeing film that is being projected onto a sheet on the wall? And the reason I say like a sheet that's not perfectly flat, a sheet that has like little waves and, you know,
Oh yes.
it's not a flat surface.
Yeah.
Isn't that a weird? And that almost becomes more noticeable to me on the Blu-rays because of the added clarity of the Blu-ray format. I'm curious, is it because of some of the post-production remastering that? Because I know they run this stuff through like a program and through the VidFire program, and it has to make sense of the subpar picture quality it's given. And I'm curious, is that where that weird shimmering effect comes from? Like, it's just the best they could do with the VidFire system or whatnot. I don't know. It's just a weird thing because, again, it always seems like it's projected on an uneven sheet.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I thought maybe it was just something to do with the, because I could see it even on my DVD at times. I just thought it was something to do with the old VHS, or maybe not VHS, but old tape they were using to get this master from. Maybe it just kind of deteriorated in some way.
I don't know. But, all right. I mean, hopefully, well, no, probably a lot of people haven't seen this story if you're listening to this podcast. Perhaps many of you
Yeah.
haven't seen it. But trust me, the overall story is really, really simple. They're coming off their last story, which was very normal in the black and white era. Like, the ends and beginnings of episodes would kind of overlap a little bit.
Yeah.
And so they're coming off the crusade, and they're in the TARDIS interior, of course. And they rematerialize on yet another alien planet. Sorry, I don't have show notes with all the particular information. That's what Josh is for.
There you go. Yeah.
Is to tell us what planet we're on and the name of all the species and everything. Anyway, they show up on a planet. There's something weird that happened with the dematerialization. Wait, is dematerializing vanishing? So yeah, rematerializing. Something weird happens with the process. There's a weird shot with Vicky and the glass. Kind of reminds me of, was it the second episode after An Unearthly Child, Edge of Tomorrow?
Yeah, third, Edge of Destruction.
Edge of Destruction. It was the third episode?
Yeah, because the Daleks came after Unearthly Child.
Oh, third story. Okay.
Good story.
See,
yeah, I always do that.
yeah, well, no, because when I said second episode, I almost thought it was part of the caveman story, but no, it was an individual story.
Yeah, just a two-parter.
Yeah, so it kind of reminded me of that episode a little bit, or that story.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Anyway, actually, we'll go back to this because I don't want to get into all the minutiae yet. They land on a planet. There's a space museum. There's a race of aliens who is running the museum. And then there's another race of aliens who are indigenous to the planet, but have been living in the shadows and would like to get these colonizers who run the space museum, off their planet. And that's the basic overall setup of the story. But going back to the rematerialization, something odd is happening on the ship with Vicky dropping the glass and it time reversing and it going back into her hand. Something's not right. And so because this is 60s Doctor Who, they're of course going to go ahead and step out onto the planet, investigate, and kind of see what's going on. The Doctor seems not to be bothered by either the weirdness of time or their switching of costumes.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that was even brought up, because what were you and I talking about offline about? Oh, the TV movie and some elements that don't quite fit into canon, and that was a different conversation we were having. But with this whole business about the clothing, yeah, this is kind of generally how I feel about 60s Doctor Who. Like the Doctor, like it's whatever. You wonder if maybe it's going to have some bearing on the story, that the clothes could just change like that. Like maybe there's a reason. And maybe I almost started thinking there was a reason, maybe.
Yeah.
but it wasn't really made clear. Like it wasn't really referenced to, I don't believe, directly later in the story. It's just something you can kind of put together retroactively.
Yeah. Yeah, the point is that things are happening that are happening out of sequence in time, so they did change out of their costumes. And the characters that we're dealing with now just didn't happen to them, which gets confusing because later on it is them, and it's like they have to like catch up with themselves. And yeah, I don't feel like they were particularly careful with how they use the almost bootstrap paradox element of some of this story. I feel like they kind of fumble it a little bit.
Well, that's certainly true. I mean, if you want to highlight that. But another odd thing about this story is that, by the way, breaking news, in many fan polls, this comes in as rated last, least appreciated of the Hartnell era. So just so you know, coming into this episode kind of has a
Yeah.
reputation coming into it. That being said, though, the first episode of this four-parter is actually rather interesting on its own.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing. And sadly, again, I am not the expert in any way on black and white Doctor Who. Honestly, I'm quite the novice even at this point.
Hmm.
But from my recollections of black and whites that I've watched most of the existing, but not all of them. Um, this would happen a lot, or this happens a lot when I watch black and white Doctor Who, especially Hartnell, perhaps. That the first episode can be quite interesting and intriguing, and then it just doesn't carry over into the subsequent episodes.
Yeah, a lot of people would say that about The Unearthly Child as well. That has a fantastic start, and then once we get into the main core of the plot, it becomes much more bland. I disagree. I quite like the Tribe of Gum, like three-parter, but this one definitely suffers from that. It has a really interesting kind of hook at the start with all this time travel stuff, but almost immediately once you get into the second episode, all that's gone, and we're just stuck with a really generic, yeah, rebels versus the invaders plot, which we've seen a million times in Doctor Who, and a million times better. I mean, they can really do some stuff with this plot, but in this one, it's just as flat as it comes.
There you go. End of podcast.
Yeah,
That pretty much sums it up right there, folks. No, yeah, it's a damn shame because this whole thing about them skipping a time track or something is really quite interesting. Even just the idea of a space museum is kind of interesting on its face.
yeah,
Just to see artifacts from this other space and time, and the idea of them all being housed together, um, all seems cool. But I don't know. You almost wonder if, I don't know, because there's little like in jokes here and there that like the characters are self-aware that they've done this all before.
hmm.
I mean, I don't mean literally in the time travel aspect. I mean, oh, doctor, like we already know what you're going to do. We already know what you're going to suggest. Like we already know how this is going to go. Of course, we're going to have to investigate. And of course, you're not going to explain everything to us until much later, if you even do address our queries. Vicky obviously seems like a stand-in for Susan. Could just be the same character, just with the actor switched out. But you do wonder in the characters of Ian and Barbara, or perhaps the actor and actress, if they're kind of feeling like this is all kind of Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, yeah, and this is close to the end for them. I mean, I think this is second from last. I'm pretty sure the Chase is after this, and that was their last one. And I do feel like they feel checked out. Hartnell, I mean, you commented earlier about how all this weird stuff's going on, and he doesn't even seem particularly interested. That seems very unusual for Hartnell, and he seems very checked out, especially in the last episode. But he doesn't even show up for the third one.
Well, that was the whole holiday business, which of course was a thing um,
Yeah,
throughout production of Black and White Doctor Who. So I'll give him a pass on that.
yeah, he could have just been like exhausted at this point and burnt out. But they also lean into a side of Hartnell that always pops up, but in this particular story, they kind of overuse, and that's his kind of like impish, like mischievous humor side. Like they use that a lot with him getting this interview with this I don't know, some sort of controller of the top brass people. And the doctor's just chuckling all the time, making his little jokes, and trying to be kind of funny in that way. And they use that in the last episode too. And I like that in small doses, but in this one, it just I feel like does not serve the Hartnell character very well here.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of classic Star Wars recently, and I could only think of Yoda dozens of times in this story. So
Yeah,
many times he does the Yoda. It's so spot on, and it wasn't just once or twice. It's several times, as you say. And I don't know what's going on with that.
yeah, they're leaning into it because they know they don't have a good story here, and they even have they do this stupid joke when because he gets captured early on, he gets separated from the rest of the group, and these rebels, they're like, okay, let's kidnap him so that we can use him to convince the rest of his friends to help us. We're just that's a great way to go about trying to get help, is to kidnap one of the the people you want help from. And they're so stupid that the doctor can easily manhandle and outsmart them, even though he's this old grandpa. And then he hides in a Dalek, and as they leave the room, he does like a Dalek voice, and he's laughing to himself. He even almost winks at the camera once he sits up out of it.
Okay, but see, I know, but it's actually entertaining. Honestly, at the end of the day,
That moment is so I feel like that's why that moment stands out.
yeah, it's ridiculous, but it is entertaining. It's actually one of the better parts or better points of this story. Um, oh my gosh, you mentioned him getting captured though, and I don't want to sound like a sourpuss, but let me just get it off. You know, just put it. It is one of the things that I found most annoying when watching the black and white era in particular, but there's still strains of it during the third Doctor's run of too much getting captured, escape, recapture, escape, capture this character while the others search, and then that one's free, but then the others get captured. People make fun of The Way of Water and how some of that happens at the end of that movie.
Me.
But it's obviously one of the things I struggle with in the oldest iterations of Doctor Who, that I just wish there was some other way. And I get it, they were producing, I don't even know how many episodes individually they produced per year in the 60s. Because, I mean, would they do like 50 episodes at times in a year? Something in that range. And I get it. That's a lot of TV and a lot of
Yeah.
time to fill. I totally get it. But I almost wish there was machete cuts of Classic Who where it was the same story, but they just chopped out a lot of the useless getting captured moments. And I'd almost rather watch condensed versions of the stories that cut out those ridiculous like time extenders. I'm just being honest. I just, I'll sit down and be like, I'm going to sit down and watch this black and white episode of Doctor Who. But then when it starts getting into the getting captured business, I'm just being honest. It's a turnoff for me. It's such a turnoff.
Yeah, and at least in this one, we get this scene with Hartnell being, they're using some sort of technology to like they put questions towards him, and then whatever pops into his mind and what comes on a camera, or comes on a TV screen, I should say. And they get a little bit of fun mileage out of that, but yeah, most of the like when Ian gets kidnapped for a while, that's not very fun. When Vicky's getting paired up with the rebels, I mean, I guess they use that to advance the plot, but I mean, all those rebel guys, those are just like the white bread. There's nothing there.
And it's insane too that it's like, okay, we're rebels. We're planning to rebel. Hey, these people might be able to help us. Hey, you know what? Why don't we kidnap just one of them and explain our situation, and they can aid us in convincing? What?
Yep.
What kind of cockamamie strategy is that?
Oh, these guys are morons. I mean,
The rebels?
yeah, the rebels. Once they kidnap Vicky, Vicky's like, "Oh, like what are you guys doing? You're directionless? I'll be your leader. I'll show you how to get these weapons, and then you can finally have your fight." What are they doing all this time? Just sitting around like maybe one day we'll do something.
Yeah, and we're led to believe that they were already planning um, this rebellion. Yet, how could it have possibly gone down without the TARDIS crew showing up? Like,
Yeah, probably couldn't.
as you say, they're so inept. Um, and of course, those are the Zerons. Um, the Morocks are the colonizers, the ones running the museum, the invaders. Um, and yes, Morok does sound a little too conveniently like Morlock. And
Yep.
we, for podcasting reasons, we've done the Time Machine not too long ago for Prognosis Negative, and there's a great many, too many, especially classic Doctor Who episodes that seem to hearken to that H.G. Wells story a bit too much. And I can't believe this is, yes, another redress of the concept of the oppressive Morocks and these hapless Zerons, or um, oh shoot, what are they called?
Yeah, the Eloy.
No, not the yes, the Eloy, but the can't remember what they're called. The blonde folks,
Oh, the Thalls.
the Thals. That's it, the Thals. I'm sorry, everyone at home. But yes, the Thals, like the hapless Thal. The Zerons so remind me of the Thals. And although Morlock certainly sounds like an allusion to Morlock, uh, according to Rob Sherman and other folks, the name was meant to be a play on literally moron. So convenient
Oh,
that it also sounds like Morlock. I'm not sure.
yeah, and this isn't a fair point. I understand that they want to take some wild choices with designs, but just like how I can barely stomach watching the second Paladin story, the Monster Paladin, because the all the characters look like they have skunk heads. These folks are the same. I cannot take these. Was it Morocs? Morons? I can't take them seriously. Every time I look at them and their stupid wigs and their outfits, I'm just like, oh man. And there's one guard. There's one like pompous, arrogant guard, and I find his performance just so off-putting when he's on screen. I'm just like, okay, let's move past this guy. I don't know if you know which one I mean. I think he shows up in the second episode, and he is like patrolling the TARDIS, and then the main leader guy shows up, and he's like, "You haven't gotten this door open?" And he just starts attacking an underling. Didn't I tell you to bring me cutting tools?
Oh yes,
I'll deal with you later. Yeah, that guy, couldn't stand that guy at all. But yeah, what did you think about those costumes? Did that stuff bother you, or did you just kind of like, okay, this is '60s Who, I'll just take it?
no, they're pretty bad. They're pretty bad. I can't. It's on the tip of my brain who they remind me of, especially with their wigs. I just can't place it. Like, I don't know if I'm thinking of the Mentats in the '84 Dune,
Oh yes,
Sue for Howitt, but it's something more than that they remind me of with their ridiculous wigs. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense how the occupiers can be so inept, because there's supposed to be this great race who's done all these things throughout the galaxy or whatever, all these conquests, and they're obviously the invaders and occupiers of this planet, so they should be tough in some sort of way,
well,
but they don't come off as particularly tough or intelligent in any possible way. And then that just makes the Zerons seem even worse because they're so inept that they can't overcome these inept occupiers. It hurts the brain, honestly, if you try to take this seriously.
yeah, I get the sense that because there's an early scene with the leader, and he's kind of complaining about like, why am I stuck here on this planet, like this useless planet? And I don't know. I get a feeling that whatever this empire is like in decline.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, all the people on this base, that this library, or this, not library, this museum, maybe they are just the fuck ups and the losers and they're just stuck here, but that's not very interesting. And they never really make it clear. And then these rebels, they all look like they're maybe in their early 20s. They're all wearing these black get-ups. They all look the same. They're just completely generic. It's just like, okay, I don't have any interest in either one of these groups. Why do I got to spend 4 episodes dealing with their plot? I don't care who wins between them. Just get me out of this story.
It's so sad. It's so sad. But and then it seems so weird that again, if you try to take the story seriously, like the Morocs, they run this museum. How can they have these Zerons just traipsing about like in corridors and different rooms? You know what I mean? Like it boggles the mind. And why would they even be doing that? The Zerons should be out in the wilderness somewhere, or like in a cave, or have like a home base or something. Why do they hang out in the museum all day?
Yeah, that's part of what makes the story feel so like it doesn't have any sort of reality. Like these characters stop existing the minute the camera cuts away.
Like in Paradise Towers, it makes sense that the inhabitants and or oh my god, what are they? The Kings?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense that it's a community. It's supposed to be like contained inside a building, so it makes sense that they're all around everywhere. But this doesn't make any sense. Like the Zerons, like do they go home at night and then the next day come back into the museum and then just hang out? Like what are they doing?
Yeah, and my question is there a civilization on this planet that the Morocs are controlling? Like, is there a wider presence of them on the planet, or is it just the space museum? Like, they never really make that clear. We, for the longest time, I was like, are the rebels only these 3 guys? And then finally, near the end, we see a few more. But yeah, it feels like the story has no reality to it. It's not in any way fleshed out.
I assume the Zerons largely inhabit the planet and have normal communities out there somewhere. And I just feel like I don't know. I'm imagining the Morocks as being like the Atreides family, like on Dune. Like they have their compound, and that's kind of the extent of it. And that's just the way that's the way my mind fills it in.
Yeah, and they could easily. I mean, they got so much time. They got 4 episodes. They could just throw in a few lines here or there to flesh that stuff out, but they don't. They don't bother. They just a lot of these 3 episodes with this plot is just wasting time. And yeah, it's very disappointing because I don't feel like a lot of the second season of Hartnell is like this. I feel like there's a lot of quality stuff there, especially something like the Romans. And then to see this only a few episodes later, it's just like, wow, it just fell through the floor. And the Web Planet as well is very similar to this in many ways. Both just like, wow, they just completely were sleeping on the job.
But they spent a lot of money on that one, don't you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And you're right. They were producing just so much television. Maybe it was just some exhaustion of just trying to let's just fill these weeks that we got to fill, and maybe that's what they were thinking. But I don't know. And I am a fan of '60s Doctor Who. I'll say a lot of this stuff I really do love a lot, and I go back to very frequently. But yeah, there's a number of stories like this one that just never makes it onto the rotation. I just never had any interest in going back after that second viewing.
But it's certainly something to revisit because, like I said, well, especially for me, because I do not revisit the '60s very often, personally, and I guess I needed this to fill in some areas of lost or gaps in my knowledge of Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely worthwhile to experience it and really try to take it seriously.
Oh no.
No, I mean because you could just put it on and go, "Oh fuck," and then just start doing like a crossword puzzle or something while it's playing.
Yeah.
But to really try to take it seriously is something.
Oh, it's just such a shame that this is the first Hartnell for the feed. Oh no, we gotta fix that at some point soon.
Is it really? Because I thought, or maybe it was my plan after we were finished with the Key to Time series. I want to say it was my plan to go into Hartnell season 2 after we finished the Key to Time, but I think perhaps Josh didn't want to do it. I don't know. That was a conversation a long, long time ago.
Yeah, and I didn't do any research. I didn't go back through the old episodes. I was just racking my brain trying to think if there was one that I could remember, but I couldn't think of any. But just a couple little spotlights to focus on. I did think it was interesting seeing Vicky in this episode take control of the rebels, and we see a little bit of her, future smarts that she has. I never much cared for Vicky, I'll say. I always thought that, yeah, she does feel like a knockoff Susan. I feel like her dynamic with the rest of the group always feels a bit strained. And she always has this look of like perpetual shock on her face, which I find a little off putting.
But I also almost thought she was just going to stay on the planet, like a la Susan at the end of the Dalek story, or
Yeah.
Leela. Yeah, like it had that vibe, like Doctor, here's where my story ends, or with you anyway. And yeah, that was
Oh,
kind of
God.
weird. It was kind of weird.
Could you imagine how sad that would be? She's going to stay with these losers.
Well, right? There's something about being a big fish in a small pond sometimes.
That's fair. She could probably run them all. Yeah. But she'd only shown up a few episodes before this, too.
True, or stories, you should say.
Stories. Thank you. Yes, I always do that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like they were once classic or black and white Doctor Who became comfortable with the idea, because obviously when Susan left, it was a novel concept for someone from the main characters to like to actually leave. But once they got comfortable with that concept, it seems like they could play pretty fast and loose. Unless your name was Jamie, it seems like they could play pretty fast and loose with some people sometimes, some characters. So it wouldn't be unprecedented like to leave at this point, even though she's one of the newer, or the newest companion at this point.
Yeah, I guess they were flying pretty fast through the Hartnell era. Yeah. With the Daleks Master Plan companion, Sarah, I can't remember her last name, something. And then that Katarina girl. Yeah, they were just out the door like that.
Yeah, and then of course in later times, Dodo, and
Oh boy.
and even Ben and Polly, who I quite liked when they showed up. Like, not that many of those stories exist, nor have I seen many Troutons,
Exactly.
but I still wish they hung around longer, because at least to me they seem so likable as these like two young 60s hipsters.
Yeah, and it's been nice that they've recreated some of that stuff in animation. It's nice to get a chance to, see some more of their stuff on screen rather than just audio dramas. Or I guess not audio dramas, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah, because yeah, retroactively, Polly is like perhaps my favorite black and white companion. Even though I've probably only seen her like in 2 stories, but still.
Yeah, did you see the faceless ones when they animated that?
Yes, yes. That might be the only one of the 60s recreations that I've seen all the way through. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, unless you count the invasion as a recreation.
Well, yeah. I think that was only 2 episodes, but yeah.
Right. There's only 2 episodes.
Oh, but I guess spreading out to the other companions here. Did you like it that we get a little spotlight on the Action Jacks and Ian here?
Yeah, that's
This big old fight scene.
that's prerequisite.
Yes.
So yeah, that was fine. I don't know how Barbara feels though, as a tag along.
Yeah, she seemed really checked out here.
Supposedly, this is the episode where the actress decided that she was going to leave Doctor Who. Was during the filming of this story.
Wow, that was quick. Yeah, because it was the next one. Wow, wrote her out like that, and Ian with her, I guess. I don't know if he wanted to leave, but
although I will say, of the companions, that I did enjoy just seeing Ian again.
Yeah,
I quite like him. I guess I would say he's one of my other favorites of the black and white era as far as companions go. I don't know, and it's just so bonkers the fact that he's still alive and
Oh, yeah.
still does little things in current times. Like it's a bit mind blowing, mind boggling.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because we're coming up. We're like 2 years away from the 60th anniversary of this story. It's just nuts.
Yeah, wow.
By the way, fair listener, I don't know why I feel like I'm on Valium right now. Um, Side note,
Talk about the Space Museum.
I know I feel like we're doing one of those SNL sketches where we're doing like the National Public Radio, and Alec Baldwin is our guest. I don't know what's wrong with me. I should have drank coffee before this.
Wouldn't have helped. Oh, were you going somewhere?
No. I just felt like, what's wrong with me?
Oh, and I will say, even though I think that they overemphasize that, yeah, like an impish element of this doctor, I do think that weird interrogation is kind of fun. And I like that not only the doctor, when the guy's like, "Where are your friends?" and he envisions these walruses. He's like, "Oh, those are just some friends of mine." And then he just imagines this kind of a little bit of a fat guy in like a suit, just standing in a room like a onesie. I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
No, that's actually really funny. All that.
It's just so weird.
Well, apparently the writer of this story, Glenn Jones, apparently wanted to be a lot more humor in the dialogue, but that was struck down.
Yeah, and yeah, the bits that are there, yeah, don't always play naturally. Like again, the scene with the doctor and the Dalek. That's just kind of a weird scene.
But like the walrus thing, and like it almost feels like a little proto Douglas Adams.
I could see that. Yeah. And I did like to see that side of the doctor of just like, I mean, he's just almost humiliating this guy. He's like, I'm not playing at all, and you think you got your sophisticated technology, but it's not that sophisticated at all. He's just making fun of him. That's kind of fun, but yeah, then he just disappears. And I did like the cliffhangers for the first two episodes of just being close-ups on Hartnell's face, looking shocked. It was kind of making me reminded of Colin Baker, a lot of his cliffhangers.
Oh boy, it's so strange how much I would rather be watching a Colin Baker story today.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
And you could choose any one you want.
And there's a lot of good ones. A lot of good ones, I think.
The other weird thing,
Or maybe not a lot.
about Vicky, to my eyes, is that the actress was 21 at the time,
Wow.
and of course she was supposed to be playing like a Susan stand-in, but her face, she looks so much older to me.
Yeah.
How is she 21? Like, she does not look like any 21. Like, think of all the young people on the socials, on the TikToks and the YouTubes, all the young influencers or wannabe influencers. Do any of them have a face like Vicky? I mean, no shade to the actress. I'm just saying, she does. People just age different.
100%. Yeah. I mean, this is such a different world back then, just to think. It's just weird. And yeah, whenever I think about that, I always think about George Lazenby in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And the fact that he was 28, it boggles the mind to think.
Holy smokes! Yes, that is nuts. That is nuts.
He seriously looks like he could be like close to 40, and it's just 28. That's just sad.
Inane question, but do you think Jacqueline Hill is wearing a wig or not in this story?
Wow, I don't know.
My first inclination was that it was her natural hair, but I'm on the fence about it.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks the same in every. Well, I guess no, it changes up every now and again. I think the Romans she had it quite different.
Well,
It could be her hair.
I don't even know about the other stories because I haven't seen them recently. I'm just thinking about this one since I watched it. And the reason I bring it up is because I was thinking if this was an American production for TV, or certainly if it was for the movies, in 1965, most certainly I would expect they'd be wearing a wig if it was American production. But the actress's hair looks quite natural for both she and Vicky, and that's astounding to me because I don't know why I think about this when I watch movies and shows from this decade. But there's the popular stuff on American television and movies, and like I said, they're more than likely wearing wigs in those productions. But everyday people in the world are trying to keep up with the Joneses as far as what's trendy. So I always try to imagine the struggle of being a girl or a woman in the '60s and trying to produce that type of hairstyle, with hairspray or whatever you have on hand, because it seems quite challenging, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And and then it seems like the actresses is like it's their natural hair. Um, I I kind of think Barbara's hair is her actual hair. It could be a wig, but it kind of looks natural to me, and it just seems like wow, that's amazing. It's amazing to try to keep up with '60s style.
Yeah, and I think Hartnell's hair is actually a wig. I think, but yeah, no, I never thought about that with her. And I can't imagine. I mean, there's so many weird styles that come back, like the bob cut. Every now and again, I see that again, and I'm just like, wow, how did that ever come back? And I'm just waiting for the day when these like beehive style hair comes back. Like it's such a shocking look, in my opinion.
It doesn't seem like it will anytime soon. Although I've been watching '80s movies, and the mid to later '80s,
Mhm.
it is weirdly a joy to see those crazy hairstyles in the movies I've been watching recently. But yeah, this is a whole other discussion.
Yeah, but it makes sense that we're going off because where else do we go? I feel like we said it all.
I don't know if you ever were into watching sports on television of any kind, but this is like when you have one of those games where it's like a blowout, but there's like still 15 minutes remaining. We already know who's going to win and who's going to lose. So the commentators just start talking about, so I'm thinking of grilling some steaks for the 3-day weekend we have coming up. Oh yeah, what's the secret to your sauce? Well, they'll just start going off into that kind of business, and I always find that funny. And so I feel like this is the Doctor Who commentary version of that.
Yeah, and I guess we could probably start rounding it down because yeah, I don't feel like I have much more.
Yeah, I don't either. It's just, hey, boys and girls, it's history. It's Doctor Who history. It's filler television from the BBC in 1965. I mean, I grew up as a kid, watching the Fifth and Sixth Doctor primarily. I mean, initially when I started watching Doctor Who at my youngest age, and that in of itself, the Fifth and Sixth Doctor are kind of a weird thing to imagine a kid like getting into. Especially when the kid is like 6 or 7 years old and trying to grasp those plots and stories of the Fifth and Sixth Doctors. But, and of course, because I started on those, I always have a certain attachment to that era.
Hmm.
I really wonder how I would have taken these in if I would have saw them at that same age for the first time, like the Hartnell Troughton era. Whether it was watching it broadcast 20 years later, or if I had just been a kid a lot at that time, I wonder, like, would I have, as poor as some of these stories can be, would I still have that nostalgia connection because I could remember seeing it at age 7 or whatever, and so would I still have that type of attachment? I don't know. I have no idea.
I think at any age that you see this story, you'd be bored. I just don't feel like there's almost anything to hold on to. I would not, if it's been a while since you've seen a Hartnell, I would not take this as a representative of what this era was. This is a particular negative. Something like Mind Warp, I think, is comparative too. Mind Warp feels so out of step with the rest of the Six Doctors era that, yeah, it's just every now and again they produce something that's just not there. This is one of them.
It was Mind Warp. That we'll see. That makes my case, or what I was just saying, because I believe Mind Warp, when we did that prior on MHC,
Hmm.
Josh absolutely hated that story, if I remember correctly. Like he really did not enjoy going over that one. But again, for nostalgia reasons, I felt quite attached to it. because I did see it on live broadcast, and it hit me hard. Even though I didn't remember any of the particulars from when I was a child, I just knew how hard it hit me because of what happens to Perry, and that always stuck with me. Because again, she was my favorite companion without a doubt, during the '80s, um, and one of my all time favorite of all Classic Who is Perry for that reason. So I mean that whole nostalgia attachment. So I was still into reviewing that one, but yeah, Josh certainly couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Mind Warp definitely. Every now and again, I'll watch and I'll be like, okay, I'm okay with it this time. But most other times, I'm highly repelled by that thing. But I agree. I wonder myself because watching the Tom Baker stuff, that those first 3 seasons, what I saw when I was that same age, like 6 to 7. Yeah, I wonder if I would have been able to relate to something like this because I was watching Charlie Chan mysteries at that same age and enjoying those. Is this? I mean, some of those Charlie Chans are really boring too. Is this on that level? I don't know.
But if you imagine you're a child in the mid '60s, especially in England, like wouldn't you maybe be drawn to just anything that had ray guns, like no matter what it was?
I feel like it's almost too far out of my experience to know what that would have been like. It's hard to even imagine what that world would have been like for me.
Or or if you had even the slightest inkling for sci-fi in general, you didn't have that many choices as far as network television, certainly in England. Would you just maybe watch anything that even remotely had a sci-fi element, and try to grasp onto it as a kid?
Oh yeah, and that was my experience even then in the late 90s. I would watch anything science fiction. I didn't care what it was. Anything horror too.
Yeah, because at the same time I was watching the Fifth and Sixth Doctor, I was also cutting my teeth on TOS because that came on once a week. I want to say it was every Wednesday evening in the UK at that time. They showed an episode of TOS, and I would absolutely watch any of those. I never understood any of the stories or plots when I was that age, but just anything quote unquote futuristic of any kind, I could happily watch.
Yeah, and putting it that way, yeah, there's a fair chance that I could have sat through something like this even at that age, just because, yeah, it was just I love science fiction. I didn't care what it was. So,
Yeah, and even though obviously Star Wars existed and I had seen it at that point, that in no way hurt like my desire to watch classic Star Trek. I mean, the difference in production values or whatever, that didn't factor, at least at that point. I would start having different feelings about TOS going into the '90s, but that's a whole other story. Oh, I will say, I was trying to remember this the whole time. I was kind of scanning through the episode in the background because it might be the Morlock that you were talking about earlier, the one who's like the number one henchman.
mm.
He looks like a relative of Ted Cruz to me.
Oh, yep, I can see it. 100%, I could see it.
And that was kind of interesting when it dawned on me while I was watching it. It's like, what is going
Maybe that's why I didn't like him. Just
on?
immediate dislike.
I was like, why is Ted Cruz's dad or uncle in this episode of Doctor Who? That's so weird. Where they even get this like Cuban actor?
I don't want to pick on this guy who I guarantee was dead, but it doesn't even feel like a performance. It just feels like he's wandering on, like he's just some, I don't know, he's working at like a dinner theater before this. He just happened to get the job.
Well, it's so weird to me. I mean, I've learned this so many times from watching special features of like modern Doctor Who and other modern British programs. But as it was back then, as it still remains to this day, it amazes me how much of a blue collar profession television acting has and still is like in the UK in general.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's certain particular breakout stars. We all know that, but by and large, like I always think that when I'm watching like random series of whatever, um, British produced or heavily like produced in the UK, because even American things like Ted Lasso, I mean, it's all produced like in the UK, and I even feel it with that show, even though it's like an American production. that you'll see some side characters or guest characters, and you just think this might be like the only thing of note in this person's entire portfolio.
Hmm.
Like it amazes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it amazes me that and the other thing you notice, not I hope this doesn't come out weird, but here it goes. In American television of any era, whether the character is important or not, generally speaking, they're going to be attractive or easy in the eye in some kind of way. I know there's character actors and things like that that's a little bit different, but just random characters, random people who have bit parts, they're going to be somewhat appealing to the eye. Whereas I find in random UK productions of whatever, you'll find many more quote unquote normal looking people, just everyday people.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, it's just an interesting thing. And it's so weird because I know the reason I think about this or thought about it watching this episode, like, because like, I looked this up on IMDb, like I look up everything we discuss on any podcast, and no one in this cast even has a headshot on IMDb outside of the Doctor and his companions.
Mm.
Nobody else has a headshot, and it's just wild. I don't know, just a British television thing.
And I'll say this, and similar to you, I don't know how this will be received, but to echo that, yeah, not casting necessarily conventionally attractive folks. The main uh, zero, I guess, or zerons. I feel
Zero.
like zeros. The main one of them that Vicky spends most of her time with. He has these kind of strange teeth. They're very pointed. For the longest time, I was like, "Is this prosthetic? Is it like these aliens have pointed teeth?" I was like, "Oh no, wait, that's just that guy's teeth." So that as well, I figure that's something you might see just regular casting.
He kind of reminded me of like a young Captain Yates.
Oh, I don't know. I guess I didn't see that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, they just seem like they were just walking down the street one day, and someone sat at a table with a sign that said, "Would you like to be in Doctor Who?" And it just seems like that's how they would cast a lot of these bit parts in random episodes of Doctor Who. Like everyday people just walk on and, okay, here, we're just gonna put these fake eyebrows on you, and hopefully this black T-shirt and trousers fit. Go ahead and put this on. What I thought was weird, like this is from memory, but like the first time we see the Zerons ever in the episode or the story, like yeah, they're all just wearing, black denim and black shirts, but like one guy looks like he's wearing, like I'm sure they all told him, hey, show up, for filming, with just black shoes, and like two of them are wearing like standard black dress shoes, and then one guy looks to be wearing like Converse lows, like the canvas
Oh wow.
Converse style shoe, and I'm just like, what? Like, did he just show up with those? And yeah, what? Well, that's what we got. So yeah, go back and look at that. Like, I just thought that was just really odd that the Zerons just seem to be wearing the shoes that they brought with them, like, to production that day.
Yeah, just speaking about their introduction, I did like the sense of mystery in that first episode when the TARDIS team are walking through the museum and they keep trying to hide. They're like, we see these people talking, but there's no words coming out. Like, why can't we understand them? And then when they eventually confront them and they're like, wait, they just didn't see us. Like, what's going on? They did spell it out a little bit too much for the kids, but I liked all that mystery going on there and what was going on. I think that was all fun.
It was all cool, but I wish they had taken more advantage of the situation. Like, I wish they would have like really reconned better, like explored more, and then tried to like pick up intel and just try to like sort of spy on both factions just to try to see what they're all about. While they did have this perceived like invisibility, like that would have been fun.
Yeah, it makes it frustrating too, because it's like, oh, wait a minute, we're going to have this advantage. We're seeing our future before it happens. But they don't really use it all that much. There's never any like clues or anything that they found that they could use later. It was just kind of, okay, we need to stop this future from happening. but it wasn't really. It was almost like incidental that this happened. It didn't feed into the future story. I don't know. That's just, what can you say?
No, you're right. You're right. And what about the stinger at the end?
The stinger at the end. I'm already forgetting it. I've been scrubbing my brain.
They tease the next story.
Oh yes, with the chase. Yes. Yeah, and the doctor. I love that little bit at the end when he steals something from the library. It's like, oh, it's a space time visualizer. They're like, isn't that a bit large, Doctor? He's like, nope, nope, nope.
Which I don't think ever directly comes into play again ever. There are talks of visualizers more like in the new series, but not necessarily like the same one or anything like that.
Could be. I feel like there's one in the heart in the Troughton era. So maybe that's this year that he stole.
They did reuse it like in novelizations and things, and perhaps some Big Finish, but yeah, but not on screen properly. And apparently, yeah, we were in the height of Dalek mania. Everyone was dying for the return of the Daleks at the time that the story aired. And I think Doctor Who and the Daleks, the motion picture, was under production at the same time that this episode was being produced as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder if that's in this randomizer. I'd be curious to go back to some of that stuff.
I need to get the 4Ks of those. I think that the 4Ks were only released in the UK.
Oh, but I think the last thing that I would be remiss not to mention is even though we don't get to explore too much of it in this episode or this serial, god damn it. I'm a giant fan of the first Doctor's TARDIS. I think it's one of the best that we've seen. I love how deep and pervasive the roundels are. I think those are really cool. And we don't get to see it in this serial here, but there's a whole wall in the first Doctor's TARDIS that's like it's almost like a computer room. I think that's amazing. And I even like seeing the little glimpse of the like food processor that they have. I always like seeing that.
Yeah, the first Doctor's TARDIS interior has certainly got to be the most interesting of the classic era, save the one that everyone loves.
Mm.
What is its official designation? Is it called the alternate or the secondary? I think it's
Yeah,
secondary.
secondary control room.
Yeah, I get it. Everybody loves the secondary. I get it. Although I postulated once, if we had had it longer, like if it wasn't damaged, I feel like it would have worn out its welcome if we had it for several stories. But I don't know.
Mm.
Although bring not that I brought that up, I am surprised they didn't ever come up with anything else unique after that point, like later in the series in the classic run. Anyway, going back, the first Doctor certainly had like the most interesting TARDIS interior in general. Although that being said, never really a fan of the cardboard blow up of the roundels.
Oh.
And what's really weird, like if you get the Blu-ray box sets, you know that
Uh-huh.
each of them contains like really cool menus for whichever respective Doctor you're watching. Like they have really cool 3D reproductions, like CGI, of the TARDIS interiors in quite shocking detail.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of funny watching because obviously this is the first Hartnell to come out on Blu-ray, and so it's kind of funny to watch this impeccable 3D recreation of his interior set, but it doesn't do any favors to that flat panel at all to see it reproduced so impeccably in 3D.
That's fair. Yeah.
Because it literally looks like the actual cardboard that it is.
Oh. But yeah, that's about all I got for this one, I think.
Yeah. So there you go. The Space Museum. And apparently Hartnell's debut on Mostly Harmless Cutaway. Woo!
Oh no.
Yeah, we gotta rate it. Tell me our unit of measure.
Oh god. Unit of measure. Broken glasses and broken hearts, just like I had when I watched this episode.
Broken glasses and broken hearts. Wait, was there a broken heart?
No, that was my heart. That was broken.
Oh, because yeah, the Doctor did suffer from something at some point when he was coming to again. But
Oh, rheumatism.
yeah.
Oh, it's just a spot of rheumatism, my boy.
Supposedly he was ill during shooting of episode 2. But anyway,
Oh, damn.
I am going to give it perhaps one of the lowest scores I've ever given something, I think, on MHC. Although we do have a lot more of Jodie Whittaker to get to at some point. But I'm actually going to give this a 2 out of 5 broken glasses. I wish it was more than that. And it's funny because if I was just rating episode 1 on its own, that's at least a 3.5, knocking on the door of a 4. But no, I'm not rating the episode by itself. I'm rating the whole entire story, and it's a 2. And actually, if it owned some of its badness even more to where it became self-aware and started playing on how bad it is, that could have made it better too. Because this could have made it like a really good like this is so close to being a good classic Doctor Who to do like a Rift Tracks on or Mystery Science Theater. Like it's almost, but not quite so bad that it's good. It's in this middle ground of just being forgettable, sadly. And so that's why I'm giving it a 2.
Yeah, the middle ground you don't want to be in.
Yeah.
Just forgettable bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm less kind. I'm giving it a 1.5.
Well, okay.
I think that it's a not recommend. Stay away from it. It's not worth seeing. I think that's most of this story except for that first episode. You could watch that and just forget the rest of it. Because yeah, it's a waste of the talent of this cast, of the Hartnell crew. This is just it's just wasted film in that regard. There's so many great examples of this era, and this one is just it's just like it's falling on its face the whole time.
Well, there you have it. There you have it. We don't really do news on this podcast, but in real time, they're releasing so many images from the current production of Doctor Who that they're almost going to spoil things for me. I almost need to stay away at this point. But there's that to hang your hat on, everyone. And I will say, just from these random images I've been seeing of Shooty, etc., it kind of looks fantastic. And I know Caleb was no fan of Murray Gold, but I am 100% here for his return. I think the first time I start hearing his scores, it's going to bring me back to the new series eras that I very much liked at the time of broadcast. So there is that out there. And I'm sure when new episodes start airing for Doctor Who again, that we'll start being more day on date than we have been since probably like series 7 or something of new, at least with this podcast. So God willing, look forward to that if Doctor Who is your thing.
Yeah, just as I guess as outside of the podcast, unless you want to do it. Did you want to do a randomizer for the next one that we might do, or save for just a random day?
Why not? Why not?
Okay, I'll pull up the randomizer right now, and we'll see what else we might potentially do sometime in the future.
Yeah, so just for the folks at home, we don't normally do this. This is not a regular thing. And I don't know when we're going to go back to the randomizer, and check in. But in the meantime, let's find out what the next randomizer episode will be.
Okay, I'll spin the wheel, or whatever it is.
Welcome, my demon.
Repair the chameleon circuit.
Affirmative, Master.
Look, Brigadier, look. I think it's starting.
Well, here we go again.
And it seems not a moment too soon.
Oh, okay. Okay. I will be returning back to some more Stephen Moffat, Doctor Who, as we take a look at The Doctor's Wife.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Oh, okay. Well, that's like almost the polar opposite of this for me.
Yes.
The Space Museum. Because that's something I could talk about any day. The Doctor's Wife in particular.
Yeah, and I have my thoughts on that one, which I think differs from many people's thoughts, unfortunately.
Well, there's Caleb for you.
So slight spoilers there.
Well, there you go. All I promise I won't take any more Valium in the future prior to recording, but
There you go.
closing out the show today, this is Eric,
And this is Caleb.
and until next time,
Even if you're about to sneeze in front of some walking guards,
don't panic.
even if you're about to sneeze in front of some walking guards,
Don't panic. That was so ridiculous. I forgot about that.
it was. I'm just watching it on screen. That's why it came up.
Oh my god. And the episode with me was released, wow, recently. Wait, what? No, is that the one I looked at the right one? No, wait, that's not true.
Yeah, because I feel like you recorded this not long after we started collaborating, and that was, I think, the end of 2020.
But it was also released, like I know there's a big gap in time from when it was recorded to when it released.
Is his a more recent podcast, or was it around during that, like 2010 to?
Oh no, more recent than that.
Okay.
I want to say this podcast just started like 2019, 2018, but I don't know for sure. And I had Mark on MHC at some point, and I don't know if that has. I can't remember if I released it when I was still releasing, or it may possibly still be not released at all.
Oh, wow. By the way, I did find one that Mark was on. At least it says Mark and Eric. And that was for Time Heist, a lost episode
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
recorded in 2014. Wow.
Holy shit. I can't believe it was that long ago.
Oh, and it does look like he did the Blue Box podcast. Huh.
Yeah, he did. That was, but when I joined him, it was like his newer podcast.
Okay, that one I've definitely heard. I listened to the Blue Box a little bit here or there over the years.
It's so hard to find things on his feed on his new podcast because they're going episode by episode, but the title they're like made up titles, kind of like how Radio Free Scarlet does it.
Oh God.
Like they don't title it, by the actor. There it is. Finally, fuck.
Yeah.
Kitchen Sink Drama is the name of the episode on the podcast. It came out the 9th of March of 21. But like I said, we recorded it, I want to say something like 8 months prior.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the TARDIS Tavern used to do that too. I actually made a spreadsheet and I wrote down all the episode names and numbers and the thing that they cover in it, just so that I could keep track.